America has been through a lot in the past 4 years. From travel bans to impeachment to flat-out sedition, the upcoming inauguration brings hope to millions. However, Biden's presidency also comes with a lot of questions. Will he be pushed further to the left? Will he make nice with Republicans for the sake of bipartisanship? Will he break his other foot? No one knows for sure. And the tried and true tactic of waiting to see leaves anxiety for a lot of people, including me. So today, I am here to provide the definitive 100% accurate layout of what Biden's first year will look like with the help of 44 and a half old friends. Let's get into it. So a little bit about me. I am a person of many random hobbies, from cryptography to making flower crowns to putting ribbons in my hair because I love Christmas. And one of the hobbies I've picked up is tarot reading, though I have not done a tarot reading possibly since March or something, so I think it would be more accurate to say that I collect tarot cards. I have this deck that has this gorgeous holographic side that I've read with approximately one time. I have this set of tarot cards based on the Full Metal Alchemist anime that I don't think I've done a single reading with. I have all of these packs of tarot cards that I'm not going to open right now because this is not a tarot cards haul, but the point is I have a lot of decks and I don't use any of them. However, the other night at the magical creative hour of 1 o'clock in the morning, I remembered that I had a deck of president cards, like presidential playing cards, right here. And I also remembered that I had read back when I was learning about tarot that there are some people who use playing cards to substitute with a tarot deck if they're just learning, if they can't afford a tarot deck. They're like $40. They're kind of pricey. And I thought, maybe I should just do some divination with some old presidents. I woke up the next morning determined to learn how to do it, and I spent 5 minutes and realized I didn't have that much energy and I didn't care. So instead of doing it the traditional way or the correct way, what I'm going to be doing is reading these playing cards based on my personal feelings about whatever president pops up because I feel like it. So this deck I got from Washington, D.C. I want to say I got it in 2010, 2011, so before the end of his 2 terms. So obviously Trump is not in this deck because nobody knew he was going to be president. However, the Joker, I believe, is Air Force One. And I feel like the Joker does really represent Donald Trump, so if Air Force One comes up, I will be reading it as Donald Trump. These cards also have more than one president on them. I want to say it's like 2 to 4 presidents per card. To determine which president I will be reading, I will also be rolling a die, and the lower number will represent the earliest president on the card, and the highest number will represent the most recent president on the card. And then just based on my personal feelings, I will divine the future of Biden's presidency. There is absolutely no way in the entire world that this will be inaccurate, so you might as well cash in your chips from this video. Throw out all of your newspaper subscriptions, cancel your cable TV. You won't need the news because you'll have me. Before I start shuffling and all of that jazz, I know that a lot of tarot readers advocate setting up a tarot reading space based on the intentions that you have for the reading. So I'm going to do that with just some really important presidential items that I have because I'm a nerd. Alright, so I have moved my camera so you can see my tarot reading space. I have a few things to set up my space. The first is a candle because I know people like to use candles in tarot readings. This is winter Christmas themed. I'm gonna light this baby up. The next thing I would like to add is this gavel that I have. There's no reason to explain why I have it, but I have a gavel, and as we know, the Supreme Court is going to be a big aspect of the beginning of Biden's presidency. That was a very Trump hand motion, my goodness. So we're gonna stick this bad boy right here because I need room for the reading. My next item for our tarot space is my copy of the United States Constitution, for obvious reasons, because it has been challenged quite a bit. And then my very last item that I'm going to be adding to my tarot reading space is another copy of the US Constitution, because we gotta double down on this thing. So this is a copy I got when I was in DC from the National Archives. It has the fancy handwriting of it. I've never unscrolled it because it's a collector's item to me and I don't want to unscroll it, unroll it, whatever the wording is. Like I said, tarot reading is a hobby for me, so I don't have it perfected, so I'm using this guy. There's a page in here that gives us a year ahead spread. There's one card for each month, and then in the middle is a significator, I think is how we pronounce it. I'm not positive. And that's the guy you read last. So each card represents one month, and the significator represents the theme of the year, apparently. Let's do some shuffling. And then we're gonna cut the cards and pick the top of our deck and lay this bad boy out. Alright, so before we get started, the only other thing is, in addition to doing my dice roll, I'm also going to be Googling each president as they come up, because there's 45 of them, and I know a little bit about most of them, but I don't want to get anything wrong, because this reading it's vitally important that it's 100% accurate. So I just need to make sure that I know who I'm talking about, because they don't give us like presidential flashcards. At least I didn't get them when I was in school. So to start off the year, I'm a little nervous, to be honest. 2020 has been such a ride that I hate, a ride that I would like to get off of immediately. I'm so excited it's almost over, but I'm prematurely terrified of 2021. So please give us a good card, January. Okay, we have 7. And 7 has William McKinley, Theodore Roosevelt, Grover Cleveland, and Benjamin Harrison. Now, Cleveland is interesting, just a fun fact, because you'll probably see him referenced a lot as we move towards 2024, because he was a president who lost his first re-election campaign and then came back and won a second term after that re-election. It's exceedingly rare. He's the only guy who's done it, I believe. If I'm wrong, there will be an annotation here. First, we have 4. Who is our president? Number 4. So the most recent guy on here would be Mr. Teddy Roosevelt. Ooh, there are a few ways this can go. So I think what we all really know about Teddy Roosevelt, besides the fact that he was fantastic in Night at the Museum, and Night at the Museum too, I believe he was in the second one, don't quote me on that, is he did a lot environmentally, which is where my mind immediately goes to, but I am going to check out his Wikipedia to see if there's anything else important. Obviously, there's other things important about him, but anything else that's important to me personally for this reading. He was sickly, great, yada yada yada, vice president, blah 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 blah. He led a 2-year expedition to the Amazon basin where he nearly died of tropical disease. Iconic. Okay, so this is too much reading, so I'm going to talk about conservationism. So something that you've been seeing a lot, well, maybe you've been saying it, the news is wild because there's a lot of things going on right now, but there's a lot of things Trump is doing in his midnight hour in the lame duck session to roll back environmental protections. So I want to say he's allowing oil drilling in the Arctic, taking away protected land status from a couple different areas. Because we get Teddy Roosevelt, January is going to be the month of Biden really trying to undo the mess that Trump did with our environmental regulations. So this will probably be him trying to immediately get back into the Paris Agreement, probably doing as much executive action as possible. Who knows if he'll be successful, but the first 100 days of Biden's presidency, expect some environmental stuff to come up. That is the month of January. Moving on to the month of February. Month of February, we have 3. And 3 has John Tyler, James Polk, Martin Van Buren, and William Harrison. I know next to nothing about all 4 of these guys. I do have to say Martin Van Buren is a fantastic presidential name. It's on my top 5 list. Let's roll the dice, see who is going to be the month of February. Number 2. So number 2 is William Harrison, who died in office. I hope he's famous for some other things besides, being president. At 68 years of age at the time of his inauguration, Harrison was the oldest person to assume the U.S. presidency, a distinction he held until 1981, when we had Reagan at 69. A historian calls him the dominant figure in the evolution of the Northwest Territories and the Upper Midwest today. So he died of either typhoid, pneumonia, or paratyphoid fever 31 days into his term.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
So, there's some things that I don't want to put out into the world, even for the sake of a joke. So I'm going to do this thing that tarot readers do. It's called drawing a clarifying card. So you take the rest of your deck and you take the card from the top, and it's basically like, hey, what the is going on? So here's our clarifying card. Oh! So we have Obama and Bush on the king. So let's roll the die and see which one is our clarifier. One is Bush. Bush did a lot of things in his presidency that are controversial. The thing that obviously comes into mind is the invasion in Iraq for non-existent weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, February is giving me a death omen. Bush being the GOP and Harrison being famous for dying would be the death of the GOP, which is something that a lot of people are talking about, especially because the secession is coming up. This actually makes a lot of sense. So we're going to say that February is the death of the GOP. If you think it means something else, you're wrong. I'm right. Moving on. March. We have 6. 6 also has some of my favorite presidential names on here. We have James Garfield, who also died in office. He was assassinated. Chester Arthur, who has a fantastic name and fantastic facial hair. It just goes with his name. Ulysses S. Grant, who is in my top 5 best presidential names. And Rutherford Hayes, who is also in my top 5 presidential names. The Rutherford B. I think the B really sells it. So let's roll our die. 4. 4 would be Chester Arthur. His name combined with his appearance just makes me so happy. He succeeded the presidency 2 months after Garfield was shot by an assassin. Historians generally rank Arthur as a mediocre president, as well as the least memorable. That's wild. How do you forget a man with this name and this facial hair? I'm going to read this as in March, Biden makes the official declaration that we're all waiting for him to make, which is he's only going to serve the 1 term and he's not going to run for re-election, clearing the way for Kamala to start doing her presidential campaigning, fundraising, whatever she gets to do this early into the cycle for 2024. We start campaigning so early these days, it's exhausting. So March will be the talk of VP Kamala becoming president. If you took a different reading from February and you would like to combine it with March, you're still wrong. I need a happy card for April. Happy card. Happy card. Happy card. Okay, so we have the Queen, which is the 3 newest presidents after Bush and Obama. Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and William Clinton. Bill Clinty. Roll our die. And we have number 2, which would be George H.W. Bush. Now, George H.W. Bush had an interesting presidency. There were a couple of things that happened to George H.W. Bush and the reason he only had 1 term. One of them being that when he came into office, it was a time of domestic crisis to a degree. So he didn't get to focus on foreign policy a whole lot, which was his big notch in his belt. He was the foreign policy guy. That's why Reagan made him his VP. It's why he was trying to give his son advice and tell him not to invade, and his son ignored him. But that also runs pretty parallel to Biden, because Biden's also a really big foreign policy guy, so I'm going to say April is going to be the month of Biden wishing he could turn to foreign policy, something with China, because that's getting out of hand, or something with Israel, because there's a lot going on right now, but because we'll still probably be in an economic crisis and COVID will still be around, he's not going to get the chance to. April is going to be the month, I'd say, to watch out for foreign policy missed opportunities. On to May, we have 10, which has JFK, Dwight Eisenhower, and Harry Truman. I have strong opinions about 2.5 of these men. Let's roll the die and see which one I'm going to talk about. 1. So that's going to be Harry Truman. He became president after Franklin Delano Roosevelt passed away. So this was in the middle of World War II? Yes, World War II. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt served more than 2 terms as president because of World War II. And when he was going into his 3rd term, when he was running for his 3rd term, a lot of people, including him, knew that he probably wasn't going to survive it because he was sickly and ill and old. And so his vice president for his 2nd term was a man named Henry A. Wallace. And Henry A. Wallace is what I would consider like Bernie 1.0. He was very liberal. He had some socialist ideas. He was very popular among the working class and the unions. And they were fired up and pumped up for this guy to be VP again and then to become president when FDR inevitably died. However, the party establishment was like, no. We don't want the working class to win here. Actually, during the DNC, I'm sorry that I'm going on this rambling, but it's just very fascinated, and Henry A. Wallace does not get talked about a lot. And I think that's a shame because he was screwed out of being president, because when they were getting ready to do the floor vote on the first day of the convention, the working class and the unions were there and they were pushing for Wallace, and essentially the party bigwigs realized if they did the floor vote that day, Wallace would become VP. And they wanted Truman to become VP because he was from the South, I believe. He was, if not a segregationist, he was down with segregation. If that's wrong, I'll insert a little note on your screen. So they ended the convention early, and then they rammed through Truman's nomination as a VP the next day, and he ended up becoming VP and then president. And unfortunately, he then went on to drop the nuclear bombs because he was just so determined. He had to be the strong man. He had to beat Russia. There's a really good documentary about this. I want to say it's on Netflix, so I'm going to link that below. But that's my tangent about how Harry Truman should have never been president. If Henry A. Wallace had become president, we probably would never dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. So, as to the point of this exercise, here's my thing. I mentioned for January, February, or April. I mentioned for April, China. There is a good possibility that China is going to be going to war with someone, possibly more than one country. They're really edging in on Taiwan. And Biden is not going to be a very China-friendly president. China likes everyone to just roll over and do what they say. So anyone who doesn't do that, they get mad at. So when I said that April was going to be the month of a missed foreign policy decision, and then we look at Truman being May and Truman kind of doing a lot of missteps with the war, I'm going to say, and I hate to say this because I would like 2021 to be better, but I doubt it will be. I will say 2021, the month of May, is going to be a month of potential war footing, whether or not we actually go to war. Since this is going to be accurate, I'm not trying to speak this into the world. Moving on to the best month of the year, June, because June is when my birthday is. So we have 4 on this card: Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, and James Buchanan. Let's roll the die, see what we get. 4. James Buchanan. He was a states' rights advocate and minimized the role of the federal government in the nation's final years of slavery. Historians condemn Buchanan for not addressing the issue of slavery or for stalling the secession of the southern states over it. Darn it! My birth month, really? So June, I'm going to say June is going to be the month where McConnell completely loses control of the GOP, particularly the Trump, MAGA, QAnon sections of the GOP, because they are right now, there's the talk of secessions, there's very much a states' rights movement, and every time there's a really big states' rights movement, it's usually about racism, civil war, states' rights movement, about slavery. The 3/5 compromise was put in the Constitution because of states' rights. I imagine what we'll be looking at is probably more health mandate arguments because, of course, thanks for ruining my birth month. On to July. 10 again. So we just did 10. That was JFK, Dwight Eisenhower, and Harry Truman. Rolling the die, we're rolling the die. And we have a 1 again. So we're going back to Harry Truman. I don't like this reading. This is making me sad about 2021. I wish this wasn't going to be completely accurate.
No, God!
I feel like just because it came in such quick succession to the last time we used Harry Truman, and I said the month of whatever comes before June, May, the month of May is going to be a month of potential war footing, whether or not we actually go to war. Since this is going to be accurate, I'm not trying to speak this into the world. I think the month of July is going to be pushback from Biden and the federal government. I anticipate there's going to be some sort of armed conflict. Whether or not the US is going to have boots on the ground, I haven't been paying that much attention to, because I would like to pretend it's not going to happen, but this reading is not letting me. So, moving on to August, please give me a happy president. Please give me a happy president. Okay, so we have the Jack, which has Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter. We're rolling the die, rolling the die, we're rolling the die. Lyndon B. Johnson is one of my least favorite presidents, to be quite honest. Because he was so racist. Yes, he signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but he did not do it happily. He was a man who was recorded using the N-word with a hard R several times. I believe he called, and if I can find a source for this, I'll put it on the screen, but I believe he called the Voting Rights Bill something, the N bill or something. So I have some opinion on Lyndon B. Johnson. LBJ. I like a president with initials though. FDR, JFK, LDJ. I appreciate it. This reading is really trying to tell me we're going to war with China. That's because the first thing that catches my eye in foreign policy, Johnson escalated American involvement in the Vietnam War, which was a bad idea. My grandpa served in Vietnam. Bad war. He also expanded civil rights, public broadcasting, Medicare, Medicaid, aid to education, and the arts, urban and rural development, and public services. Assisted by a strong economy, the war on poverty helped millions of Americans rise above the poverty line during his administration. So I'm going to say there's two possible readings here. I'm going to give you the happy reading and then the not so happy reading. So the happy reading is that in August, Biden finally just has to up in Congress, and McConnell, he's just going to start pushing through some changes, particularly welfare, war and poverty sort of stuff, really push on getting the economic stimulus into the country so that we can start recovering from this horrible year. And even honestly, these two readings don't have to be separate. They could also happen in conjunction. The other side is that we are going to war with China for sure. And that's the one I'm believing the most because this is the third card that I've taken that meaning from. So, joy to the world. On to September, we have the 9. 9 has FDR, Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. So we're gonna roll the die, we're gonna roll the die, and we got a 3. So number 3 is going to be Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I don't know if that's how he talked, but it just feels like the way you should say his name. FDR did a whole lot of stuff. He was a busy man. But what we all know him best for is the New Deal. So I would love for this to mean that the Green New Deal is going to happen, or at least it's going to get revamped, because I've read the Green New Deal. It's only 14 pages. It's very much like this would be nice if it happened, but there's no framework for anything happening or how it's going to happen. There's like a large, broad thinking, but there's no details in it. So I would love to say that this is giving us the omen in September because we want some good vibes because the first 8 months are just not fun. I want this to be that either we're getting a New Deal. I'm just hearing David Tennant's voice.
Strictly speaking, it's the 15th New York is the original. So that makes it
New Deal. That's focused on the economy, or that they're going to revamp environmental regulations, which would make sense with what's happening in January, and give us an actual new Green Deal that has a solid framework that you can actually legislate off of. So one of those two things, or possibly both. Why not do 2 New Deals in the same month? On to October. We have 4. Again, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, and James Buchanan, or Buchanan, whatever his name is. Rolling the die, rolling the die. So number 2 is Millard Fillmore. Fantastic name. I know nothing about this man. Millard Fillmore was born in the Finger Lakes. That's a great name. Fillmore is giving me some bipartisan fluffness here. Essentially what I'm reading from his Wikipedia page is that the 1850 Compromise had some good bits, had some bad bits. I don't feel like getting into it. I will put a list of the good and the bad bits on screen. Ooh. Oh no. Ooh. Oh no. And this is kind of echoing a concern I think a lot of people on the left have about Biden's presidency because he's worked with McConnell before. There is the hope that he'll be able to restore bipartisanship to the federal government so we can actually get done. That'd be lovely. That'd be great. But Mitch McConnell has changed since Joe Biden was in the Senate. He has more power. He's playing hardball a lot more now. So I think this is kind of going to be the month where Joe Biden really does try to do his big bipartisan push, and it gets through and everyone gets mad at him. Nobody's happy. On both sides, people are mad because that's how politics works. November, we have 8, which has William Taft. William Taft's the president that got stuck in the bathtub. Woodrow Wilson and Warren Harding. I hope it's William Taft. I don't know what that would mean, but I just want it to be William Taft. We're gonna roll the die. Roll the die. We're gonna roll the die. And we're not getting William Taft. That's a tragedy. honestly. We're getting Warren Harding instead, whose name sounds mildly familiar. So we had naval limitations programs that lasted a decade. Harding released political prisoners. He had some people tried for corruption. He is generally regarded as one of the worst presidents. So I'm gonna say November is the month of fallout from October. October is when he does the bipartisanship push. November is when it blows up in his face. Get your Twitter pitchforks out for the month of November. And then our last month is December. We go back to the Queen, which has Reagan, HW, and Billy Boy. Rolling the die, rolling the die. Okay, number 1 is Ronald Reagan. I recently told my roommate that Ronald Reagan is kind of like the Fight Club of presidents. Like, if people say that they appreciate Fight Club, they don't watch it a whole bunch, you're like, okay, yeah, it's a good movie. So if people say that there were some good policies Reagan did or some good things happened in the Reagan era, that would not be an incorrect thing to say. But if someone says Fight Club is my absolute favorite movie, particularly a guy. So if a guy or someone says Reagan was my absolute favorite president, you gotta run. Because Reagan was really Trump 1.0. He was an actor who could actually state a script, where Trump cannot do that. He was very much a puppet being like maneuvered by the political figures. I'm sure I have a documentary to wreck here, but yeah, Reagan. I have some opinions on Reagan, and so since he is Trump 1.0, I'm going to be December is the month where Trump comes back loud as hell. I don't think he will ever have gone away, but I think capitalizing off of the October bipartisanship disaster, which is probably going to make the MAGA people really mad, as well as probably the progressives really mad, and then the fallout in November, that's when Trump's going to come in and be like, here's my opening, folks. I can't do a Trump impression, but that's going to be December. It's going to be the return of Trump's air horns, possibly some rallies. Our last card is our significator, which talks about the theme of the year. And we get 9 again. Coolidge, Hoover, FDR. We're gonna roll the die. And we got 3. And 3 is once again FDR. I'm gonna say a la FDR in the Great Depression. The Great Depression, that's what it's called. The theme of the year is going to be domestic policy and focusing on recovering the economy from the impact of COVID-19, which makes a lot of sense. That would be why Biden can't focus on foreign policy. It's going to be a year of attempted economic recovery. I don't know if it's going to work. I hope it does, because ODR was successful with his, but that's the whole reading. As I said at the beginning of this video, you now have no need for newspaper or the news. Feel free to spend your 2021 reading the Constitution, or collecting tarot cards, or reading about past presidents, I guess, if you also find that interesting. That's gonna be it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you've subscribed to my channel already, I really appreciate it. This is a fun little experiment for me because quarantine, we're all picking up new hobbies. But with all that said, that's gonna wrap up my video. Happy holidays, happy inauguration coming up, and fingers crossed that 2021 is going to be at least a little bit less miserable than 2020.